7 days after my master basically kicked me off the mountain. I finally followed the compass back to the home I was taken from 15 years ago. I stood at the main gate and introduced myself, but the security guard just scoffed at me. "What kind of lunatic are you? The Ross family's daughter was found 5 years ago. Today's her engagement party to the Vance heir. You better get lost." I tilted my head and saw the welcome sign by the door, celebrating the engagement of Ashton Vance and Wendy Ross. Seriously? I'm standing right here, so how am I getting engaged to someone else in there? I watched the scene unfold with a smirk, suddenly remembering the prophecy my master made for me years ago. A cuckoo in the nest, kindness met with spite, a bringer of disaster. Are you sure the Ross's daughter was found 5 years ago? I stood my ground, a wry smile on my face as I looked at the guard. Of course I am. He snapped impatiently. I've seen your type a million times. You think you can pretend to be the long-lost daughter and get rich quick. The real Mississippi Ross had the family keepsake, and they even did a DNA test. You think just any nobody can waltz in here and make that claim? Suddenly, a soft, gentle voice drifted over. What's going on? I looked toward the sound and saw a woman in a long red dress standing in the doorway. She looked vaguely familiar. The moment she saw me, her expression turned to one of pure shock. She knows me? The security guard hurried over to her. Mississippi Ross, he said respectfully, this woman keeps insisting she's the real daughter. We can't get her to leave. Wendy's face changed at his words, and she immediately shot back. Why are you still listening to her nonsense? Get some more people and throw her out. If this engagement party gets delayed, which one of you wants to take responsibility for it? The guard was startled by Wendy's vicious expression and quickly bowed his head. Right away, Mississippi Ross. We'll get rid of her now. Men. Quick as a flash, I kicked one of them away, but more guards swarmed forward and pinned me down. Seeing how nervous Wendy was, I started yelling at the top of my lungs. Help. There's an imposter pretending to be the Ross's daughter. The fake is assaulting people. Wendy's face went pale. Shut her up. She shrieked in a panic. Just then, another voice came from behind her. Wendy, what's wrong? While the guards were distracted, I broke free from their grip, glanced at the man, and stated flatly, You must be Ashton Vance. The woman standing in front of you, Wendy, is not the Ross's daughter. She stole my identity, and I have proof. Wendy grew even more frantic. She grabbed Ashton's hand desperately. Ash, this woman is some kind of con artist. Don't believe a word she says. Ashton saw the conviction in my eyes and hesitated for a moment before squeezing Wendy's hand reassuringly. What are we paying security for? He roared. Get this fraud out of here now. Throw her as far away as you can. I'll take full responsibility for whatever happens. Wendy was stunned for a second. Then her face lit up with joy. The guards understood that Ashton was dead set on protecting Wendy. They immediately grabbed batons from nearby, ready to literally beat me down and drag me away. My expression turned cold. My master taught me divination and fortune-telling. But fighting? I guess he was worried his old bones would break, so he never taught me how to throw a punch. As I was thinking, a baton swung toward my back. I couldn't dodge in time, and a heavy blow landed hard on my arm. There was no time to think. Ignoring the searing pain in my arm, I snatched the baton away and smashed it against a window. Crash. The sound of shattering glass was followed by screams from the guests inside. The doors burst open, and a richly dressed couple rushed out. What is going on? I recognized them instantly as my biological parents. Before Wendy or Ashton could say a word, I spoke. My name is Piper Ross. That one simple sentence made my father's face drain of color. How do you know that name? When the Ross's daughter was born 22 years ago, a traveling mystic read her fortune and declared that she had a difficult fate. To change it, she was not to meet strangers before she was 7, and her real name had to be kept a secret until she turned 18. Because of this, for all these years, no one knew the eldest Ross daughter's original name was Piper. No one except the Ross family, and Piper herself, who had been taken. It's my name. Why wouldn't I know it? I stared at Wendy and suddenly smiled. On the other hand, why was this so-called Mississippi Ross in such a hurry to get rid of me the moment she saw me? All eyes turned to Wendy. Ashton immediately stepped in front of her. Mr. and Mrs. Ross, are you really going to listen to this woman who just appeared out of nowhere? Wendy has been through so much, and she's lost some of her memories. Maybe she just accidentally let her name slip to someone along the way. Wendy's confidence returned. She held up her arm, showing off a scar. Isn't this scar I got protecting my brother enough proof? So what if she knows the name? Does she have a scar like this? Before anyone could react, Wendy lunged at me. I instinctively pushed her away, but she managed to rip my jacket off, revealing a smooth, flawless arm. What do you have to say for yourself now, you little liar? My mother exploded with anger, her eyes glaring at me. I smirked and pulled my jacket back on. That thing was hideous. Of course I had it surgically removed. And Wendy, so what if you have that scar? Can you tell us exactly where and why you got it? Wendy's face stiffened. Then she quickly said, a burn. It was a burn. My brother and I were playing with fire, and I got hurt by accident. I just chuckled and shook my head. Wrong. I was lured into the woods. My brother came looking for me, but we got lost. He lit a fire to keep us warm, but accidentally set some dry branches ablaze. I was the one who pushed him out of the way of a falling, burning log. Oh, and there's also the mole behind my ear and the butterfly-shaped birthmark on my shoulder. I pulled my jacket off again, revealing the marks without hesitation. Then I looked at Wendy, whose face was now as white as a sheet, and said with a half-smile, now what? Anything you have I have too. My brother, Cole, who had just arrived, heard all this and froze on the spot. My parents immediately looked to him for confirmation. Cole was silent for a moment, then he nodded. She's right. Hearing that, my mother's vision went dark, and she staggered back. This can't be. Who is my daughter? Seeing her parents wavering, Wendy rushed forward. Dadma, are you really going to believe this stranger? Don't forget, I was the one who brought the family keepsake to you. And you did a DNA test. Today is supposed to be my and Ashton's special day. And now this imposter shows up to ruin everything. Who knows what her real motive is? Her panicked words were enough to steady their wavering resolve. That's right, my mother murmured. We did a DNA test. The Ross family had become more and more successful over the years, and they'd seen their fair share of people claiming to be their long-lost daughter. Some had even paid off former family servants to get any scrap of information to try and trick them. So when Wendy showed up, even though she had the keepsake and all the identifying marks, they still did a DNA test. My father, however, was thinking further ahead. He looked at me with suspicion. Young lady, who sent you? Why pick today of all days? What is your goal here? I found the whole thing absurd. Just then, Ashton's parents walked out. The moment I saw Ashton, I frowned. You were the one who brought Wendy to the Ross family, weren't you? Everyone's attention snapped to Ashton. His mother, having learned what was happening, eyed me warily. What is this nonsense? My son only met Wendy after she had already been found. Stop telling lies. Seeing how certain she was, I studied Ashton's and Wendy's faces and suddenly smiled. By the water, many trees, birds overhead. To the northwest, at a crossroads. That's where you two first met, isn't it? Based on your lines of fate, it couldn't have been more than 20 miles from here. That would be Lakeview Park, next to Heron Island. Am I wrong? Ashton's father was about to reprimand me. But then he caught a glimpse of his son staring silently at the floor. Ashton, what is going on? Ashton said nothing. I gave a small smile. I was lucky. After I was taken, I was raised by someone who taught me a thing or two about reading fortunes. If you still won't admit it, I don't mind saying a little more. But if I do, I can't guarantee those things won't be something you'd rather not have aired in public. Ashton panicked. Yes, I was the one who brought Wendy to the Ross family. Ashton, what on earth? His mother couldn't believe she'd been proven wrong so quickly. She grabbed his arm, demanding, why didn't you ever mention this before? Ashton glanced nervously at Wendy. I was just passing by at the time, and Wendy grabbed onto me and wouldn't let go. She kept insisting she was the Ross's daughter, and even showed me the jade pendant. It looked real, so I thought it wouldn't hurt to try. So I helped her out. After explaining, Ashton's confidence seemed to return. So what if I helped her? What does that prove? The DNA test already confirmed that Wendy is the Ross's daughter. Besides, we don't know anything about this woman. Maybe she somehow found out that I helped Wendy back then. Now she's here playing all these mind games. I'm telling you, she's up to no good. Ashton accused me heatedly. I just frowned, feeling a sense of chaos from the people in front of me. Perhaps it was because of the impending disaster, but my normally crystal clear readings felt like they were shrouded in fog when I looked at them. Especially between Wendy and Ashton, where a tangled, blurry double thread had appeared. Up to no good? I sighed and slowly shook my head. You know, I really didn't want it to come to this. As I spoke, I pulled a file from my bag and tossed it to Cole. When they saw the words DNA analysis on the cover, the faces of everyone in front of me changed. Take a look. When you were searching for me, you left your DNA samples on file at Mercy General. Anyone who thought they had a lead could go and get their own test done. When Wendy came back, you were so overjoyed that you completely forgot about it. This is the test I just had done. The Ross family has a controlling interest in Mercy General, so I doubt you'll think I faked it. In this day and age, people believe in science. I knew a few words wouldn't be enough to convince them. That's why I'd prepared the DNA report in advance. I hoped I wouldn't need it, but it looked like I had no choice. My parents rushed over to look. I had done 3 copies of the report. One for my father, one for my mother, and one for Cole. Every single one clearly stated that I was their biological daughter and sister. Impossible. Wendy's face was chalk white as she stumbled backward. How is that possible? I'm the Ross's daughter. Who the hell are you? Just then, my father's phone rang. As soon as he answered, an anxious voice echoed loud enough for everyone to hear. Mr. Ross, a young woman just picked up 3 DNA reports from Mercy General. The results show that she's the real Mississippi Ross. Also, she said her name was Piper Ross. A stunned silence fell over the crowd. Then people started whispering. What's going on? How can there be 2 daughters who both passed a DNA test? Exactly, I never heard anything about twins. Twins. I don't know, but that girl does look a lot like Mrs. Ross when she was younger. The whispers reached everyone's ears, and suddenly Wendy was the focus of dozens of strange looks. She looked around frantically, reaching for Cole's hand, but he quietly moved it away. Seeing that her parents were also silent, Wendy turned to Ashton, her eyes welling with tears. Ash, today is our engagement party. Don't tell me you don't believe me either. Ashton looked at her with pity and quickly wiped away her tears. Wendy, don't cry. The only woman I've ever wanted to marry is you. If I had to marry someone else, I'd rather die. Wendy was deeply moved, burying her face in his shoulder and sobbing quietly. Ashton looked at his parents. His mother sighed and tugged on her husband's sleeve, at a loss for words. With 3 DNA reports and Wendy's evasive behavior, the truth was obvious. But Ashton was clearly determined to protect Wendy, and to make matters worse, this marriage alliance was something the Ross family had begged for to get in on the Vance family's new project. Ashton's father took a deep breath and walked over to my father. I only have one son, Ashton. The entire Vance family fortune will be in his hands one day. So when it comes to his wife, I naturally want him to marry someone he loves. Someone from an equal standing is best, but if not, it doesn't matter. But I advise you to think carefully. If this marriage doesn't happen, you should consider who stands to lose the most. My father instantly understood. He looked at my mother, who said hesitantly, Wendy has always been so sweet and considerate. For the past 5 years, I've thought of her as my own daughter. Her indecisive words made Cole look at them in disbelief. Dad, Mom, what are you trying to say? Piper is your daughter, my sister. It was our fault she was taken, our fault she suffered all these years. We even let someone else take everything that was rightfully hers, and almost kept her from ever coming back. Now that Piper's finally home, why are you saying things like this? My parents didn't answer. But from the crowd of guests, a man suddenly frowned. That young lady. Why does she look so familiar? A moment later, his expression changed dramatically. He rushed over to me, his voice filled with excitement. I remember now. Has the great Master Yuan come to the city with you? Seeing my confusion, the man quickly explained. 3 years ago, my company went bankrupt, and I was buried in debt. I went to Mount Sterling one night to end it all, but you and Master Yuan showed me another path. You said it was a trial I had to face, and that once I passed it, the road ahead would be clear. You told me to go 3 miles west from the base of the mountain, and I would meet a benefactor who would save me. I've always wanted to find Master Yuan to thank him, but you both keep such a low profile and travel constantly. I haven't had the chance to express my gratitude all these years. I never thought I'd run into you here today. I finally recognized the man, and my brow relaxed. There's no need for thanks. The fact that you met me and my master means your time wasn't up. It was fate. Just continue to do good deeds and live an honest life. A ripple of shock went through the crowd, followed by a flurry of whispers. Isn't that Mr. Carter from Sterling Group? When he went bankrupt, I heard he saved old Mr. Kingsley's life, and that's how his fortunes turned around. The Master Yuan he's talking about, could it be the legendary Master Yuan? The moment that name was spoken, I felt the heat of dozens of intense stares on me. My father hurried forward. Piper, are you really Master Yuan's only disciple? Ashton's father also looked uneasy. Master Yuan's influence was worth more than 10 Vance families combined. Making an enemy of Master Yuan's disciple for the sake of his son's true love was a price he was unwilling to pay. His wife understood this as well, and her gaze toward Wendy was now tinged with dislike. Seeing this, Cole pulled my father aside. Dad, what are you doing? Are you saying that if Piper had no connection to Master Yuan, you would have disowned her? You would have just let someone else steal her entire life? My mother stepped in to mediate the argument. Cole, that's your father. What do you think you're doing? Cole ignored her and looked at me with concern. Piper, tell me what you want to do. I'll support you no matter what. I glanced at Wendy's nearly contorted expression and smiled. Why don't you all go ahead and finish the engagement ceremony? Of course, the engagement did not continue. The Vance family might have been willing to bully the Rosses into abandoning a penniless daughter, but they wouldn't dare offend the sole disciple of Master Yuan. No matter how much Ashton loved Wendy, he knew this marriage was no longer a simple matter. The grand engagement party ended up fizzling out. I got my wish and was welcomed into the Ross home. My parents looked at me, trying to curry favor. Piper, it's so good to have you back. I've arranged for you to have the largest north-facing room. Maria is cleaning it now. If you don't like it, we can redecorate. At that, Wendy shot up from her seat. Mom, that's my room. Insolence. My father snapped impatiently. Who said it's yours? That room belongs to my daughter. Are you an imposter, now daring to fight with Piper over it? Wendy's eyes turned red, and she glared at me with pure hatred. I couldn't be bothered with such a pathetic drama. So I began. The Ross family suddenly has 2 daughters. How exactly do you plan on explaining this to the public? My parents exchanged a look. Finally, my mother answered. Piper, the company has a very important project right now. Our public reputation is critical. This whole mix-up about finding the wrong person isn't something we can easily publicize. So how about this? We'll tell everyone you 2 are fraternal twins. You're the older sister, Wendy is the younger. And the engagement to the Vance family, would you be willing to let Wendy have it? Wendy instantly understood their meaning. Her tears stopped, and a look of delight crossed her face. Cole jumped to his feet in protest, but I reached out and pushed him back down into his seat. What's wrong? I asked them coolly. You're not willing to give up a good marriage prospect like Wendy, but you're also not willing to offend the Vance family. So you're trying to talk me into this? They didn't expect me to call them out so bluntly. My father's expression hardened. Do you want the Ross family to announce to the world that after a decade-long search, we brought home an imposter? He said, his voice sharp with annoyance. Besides, you haven't learned anything. You don't know anything. Look at yourself. What makes you think you're fit to be the Ross's daughter? You clearly had the ability to find your way back, so why didn't you? Why did you choose the day of the engagement to cause a scene? I think you did this on purpose. He slammed his hand on the table, his eyes filled with anger. I gave a sarcastic laugh. Well, let me ask you something. The Ross estate is remote and has tight security. Why would kidnappers take such a huge risk, with so many guards and so much surveillance around? They snatched me, and then never asked you for a single dollar in ransom. Was my disappearance all those years ago really just an accident? At my words, my mother's lips trembled. The servants nearby bowed their heads even lower, holding their breath. Piper, what are you implying? Are you suggesting we intentionally got rid of you and have been pretending to look for you all these years? Tears streamed down my mother's face, her eyes filled with disappointment. If we really didn't want you, we could have just abandoned you at the start. Why would we raise you so well for all those years? Cole also tried to reason with me. Piper, it was my fault. I wasn't watching you carefully enough. But Mom and Dad had nothing to do with it. For years, anytime they heard a rumor about you, they would drop everything to check it out. Once, they heard you might have been taken to a remote mountain village. I wanted to go, but they insisted on going themselves. They got caught in a landslide and nearly died. Piper, if you're going to blame anyone, blame me. I pulled my arm away from his hand and smiled faintly. You've all got one thing wrong. I don't blame anyone, and I don't hate anyone. But I am going to find out what really happened when I disappeared. And I'm going to find out how Wendy managed to impersonate me in every single way. My master once read my fortune. A cuckoo in the nest, kindness met with spite, a bringer of disaster. Those 12 words made the color drain from everyone's face. Cole glared at Wendy. You still haven't told us. How exactly did you impersonate Piper? Wendy was terrified, her face pale. She stammered for a long time, and only spoke the truth after they threatened to call the police. I'm an orphan. There was a psychiatric hospital next to the orphanage. The director there would pay us to clean the place. There was a woman there who was out of her mind. She was always rambling about nonsense. Later, I found out she used to be the nanny for the Ross's daughter. She was fired after the girl disappeared, and her husband's abuse drove her insane. I learned a lot from her. Then by chance, I saw the family keepsake at a street stall. And then I just wasn't thinking straight. After hearing her story, my father immediately sent someone to investigate. Coincidentally, the nanny who took care of me as a child had indeed been in that hospital, but she had died in an accident just 2 days ago. The prophecy made Cole extremely anxious, and he demanded that Wendy move out of the house immediately. But after 5 years together, my mother had grown attached and was reluctant to let her go. Seeing them all trying to paint me as the villain tearing their family apart, I simply said, I won't be living here. It's just money. I have plenty. I've already bought the villa next door. I'd appreciate it if you didn't disturb me. Before the Rosses could respond, I gathered my things and walked out. The villa had already been cleaned. I sank onto the sofa and sighed, looking at the mountain of missed calls and unread messages on my phone. My master, for all his age, could still throw a tantrum like a child. All because I didn't want to deal with his prophecy, he'd angrily kicked me out. I knew he was just worried that the disaster in the prophecy would come after me and take my life. I thought I could resolve it quickly, but it was proving to be more complicated than I expected. A cuckoo in the nest. For now, all signs pointed to Wendy. But if I hadn't sought out the Ross family, Wendy would have had no reason to find and harm me. So why did the prophecy appear that way? I shot up from the sofa. After thinking for a long time, I decided to start with Wendy. The Ross family went ahead with their original plan and announced that we were fraternal twins. I was the older sister, Wendy the younger. This story covered up everything Wendy had done and gave the Vance family a squeaky clean daughter-in-law. To celebrate this double happiness, they decided to combine Ashton and Wendy's engagement party with a party to welcome me back into the family. The date was set for 7 days from now. Cole was the one who told me. He handed me the invitation with a helpless look on his face. I tried to talk Mom and Dad out of it, but they insisted. Piper, if you don't want to. No. I took the invitation from him, carefully reading every word. 7 days is plenty of time. Cole was used to me saying things he didn't understand. He ruffled my hair and sighed. Piper, I know this is unfair to you, but I promise you, what's yours will always be yours. I didn't reply, and Cole eventually left in silence. Perhaps out of guilt, my parents started contacting me frequently. Jewelry, houses, designer bags, homemade soups and pastries. A constant stream of gifts arrived at my door. After refusing the 76th item, I looked at my mother's expectant face and asked, Are you visiting me so often because you're afraid I'll make a scene at the engagement party tomorrow? My simple question left her stunned. She staggered back a step, hurt. Piper, I'm your mother. Why do you think I have an ulterior motive for being nice to you? I looked at her blankly and forced a smile. What if I do make a scene at the party tomorrow? What if I expose the fact that Wendy isn't a Ross, that you just made up that story because you couldn't bear to lose the Vance family's help? You can't. The words rushed out of my mother's mouth before she could stop them. Her face went pale. Piper, please try to understand our position. The company has been having a lot of problems lately. Many other companies were willing to help us, but you told them not to. If we lose the Vance's support now, your father's life's work will be completely ruined. I couldn't help but laugh. I leaned in close to her ear. I've known all along. You resent me. Before she could speak, I cut her off. You don't have to lie to me anymore. Don't worry. Once this is all over, I'll leave. As my biological mother, you should want me to be safe and sound, right? I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with a complicated expression on her face. The next morning, Cole was waiting for me at my front door. When I asked about Wendy, he seemed dismissive. She has mom and dad and the Vance family looking after her. She doesn't need me. I just need to take care of my real sister. It was my fault you were taken all those years ago. This is the least I can do. I remained silent and followed him to the banquet hall. It seemed the Ross and Vance families were determined to erase the memory of the last disastrous party. They had pulled out all the stops for this one. Everyone who was anyone in the city had received an invitation. What was supposed to be an engagement party had turned into an event grander than most weddings. I knew why my parents insisted I come. It was to prove their twin story was true. After all, no one would believe I could stand there so calmly if it weren't. Wendy, emboldened by my parents' favoritism, had already been busy pulling strings. For the first half hour I was there, not a single person dared to speak to me. Seeing me isolated, she strutted over, gloating. So what if you're the real Mississippi Ross? Mom, Dad, and Ashton all chose to stand by me. As for my brother, it's only a matter of time before he chooses me over you too. The 5 years of love we've shared are more than enough to erase whatever meager connection you had with him as a child. I gently swirled the wine in my glass. You and Ashton can't be together. Wendy was about to fly into a rage when a servant hurried over and told her it was time to get ready. The ceremony was about to begin. As she left, she shot back, Piper, who do you think you are? Ashton and I will be happy together forever. As if to prevent me from causing trouble, several burly bodyguards suddenly appeared by my side just before the ceremony started. On stage, the two families gave their speeches. Ashton and Wendy were beaming with joy and affection. The MC smiled. Don't Mr. Vance and Mississippi Ross make a wonderful couple? Let's give them a big round of applause, shall we? Crash. The applause was cut short by the sound of a shattering wine glass. All eyes turned to me. They cannot get married. My mother rushed down from the stage. Piper, what are you doing? She hissed. Even Cole, who had always been on my side, pleaded softly, Piper, you didn't object to this before. Please, let's not cause a scene. I looked up in surprise and smiled. When did I ever say I didn't object? Besides, I'm trying to save them. After all, how can half-siblings, a brother and a sister, get married? The crowd erupted in a shocked uproar. At the same time, the large screen behind Ashton and Wendy lit up, displaying a series of intimate photos of Ashton's father with the same woman, photos of that woman holding a baby, and finally, several DNA test results. Everyone see that clearly? I asked with a pleasant smile, then turned my attention to Wendy. As for whether it's true, Wendy, or should I say Wendy Lynn? You, of all people, should know whether I'm lying or not. Your mother was deeply in love with him, but in the end love couldn't compete with money and power. She was cast aside, gave birth to you, and then came to the Ross household to work as my nanny. Because of the family's rules, I wasn't allowed outside. One day you snuck out to play and happened to meet the young heir of the Vance family. You excitedly told your mother, but her face changed, and she insisted on taking you away. You refused. You knelt before me, crying and begging. In the end, it was me who convinced your mother to stay. So why, after learning that the Vance and Ross families were considering a marriage alliance. Did you deliberately lead the kidnappers to me? On the screen, a stream of photos and videos played, all confirming my words. Wendy broke down completely. She grabbed a fruit knife from a table and lunged at me. I kicked the knife out of her hand and sent her sprawling to the floor. Wendy Lynn, I was good to you, wasn't I? Why did you repay my kindness with such betrayal? Because you deserved to die. She glared at me with pure hatred. Then her eyes shot toward my parents. You think you're safe just because I'm exposed? How do you think I had the power to bring kidnappers here? It was your parents who wanted you dead. Gasps echoed through the room. Cole was furious. What are you talking about? Am I? Wendy's laughter grew more unhinged as she pointed at him. Cole, why are you pretending to be so innocent? Have you ever wondered? You were always so frail and sick, and doctors said you wouldn't live past 18. So why is it that after Piper was born, you started getting healthier, while she who was always so strong, grew weaker? It's because she was born to save you. Your parents swapped your fates. They made up lies to keep her hidden from the world. It was all for you. Cole looked at our parents in disbelief, but they avoided his gaze. Seeing his devastated expression, Wendy grew even more triumphant. But they didn't expect Piper's life force to be so strong. The ritual to swap your fates was too slow, so they decided to get ruthless. They arranged a kidnapping to have her sold off to some remote village, where her suffering would weaken her life force. I just helped things along a little. Without me, it would have happened eventually. Sooner or later, she would have died. Your parents knew everything from the very beginning. That's why they weren't angry. They even gave us a huge sum of money to disappear. Their search for Piper all these years? It was all a lie to deceive you. Isn't it hilarious? You were the reason Piper was taken, yet you were the one who wanted her back the most. They even knew I wasn't Piper, but to keep up the lie for you, they helped me fake the DNA test. Shut up. Cole finally roared. He rushed to our parents, demanding, Dad, Mom, say something. None of this is true, right? Our mother couldn't bear to look at him. Cole, she whispered, we had no choice. You're our son. We watched you grow up. How could we just stand by and watch you die? And Piper isn't your daughter? Cole was shattered. He stumbled backward, crashing into a table. She's your daughter too. You always called her your little lucky star, said that after she was born, the family business thrived and my health improved. And you were planning to kill her. A cuckoo in the nest, kindness met with spite, a bringer of disaster. Master Yuan, he was so right. As the words left his lips, Cole suddenly coughed up a large mouthful of blood and collapsed to his knees. Cole! Cole! Our parents rushed to his side. How can this be? They cried in a panic. How? Are you looking for this? A small wooden tablet, carved with complex symbols, dangled from my palm. You. My mother's eyes widened in horror. You knew? I laughed mockingly. Of course I knew. I didn't die, so you were afraid his health would fail again, right? So you found the same mystic who swapped our fates, and had him hide this tablet and countless other talismans in the gifts you sent me. You prayed day and night for my death so your plan would succeed. But there's one more thing. That mystic lied to you. From the very beginning, it was me he wanted. My life force is exceptionally strong. If it could save the family business, it could certainly absorb his own sickness. You thought swapping our fates made Cole better, but you never realized it was simply because he spent every day by my side. If you had done nothing, he would have been cured long ago. But I should thank you. By creating this whole charade, you led me to my master. My parents stared at me, shaking their heads. Impossible. You're lying. You're a liar. The wail of police sirens grew louder in the distance, and the faces of many people in the room turned pale. I stepped away from my mother's reach. I told you, I said with a small smile, this engagement party wouldn't happen. I've already collected evidence of all the Vance and Ross families' illegal activities and handed it over to the police. And Wendy Lynn, when you decided to steal my identity to be with Ashton, your mother tried to stop you. She told you the truth, and you burned her alive in that psychiatric hospital, along with the 37 other people caught in the blaze. This is your karma. Wendy's face contorted. She turned to find Ashton. But he backed away from her, his eyes filled with fear. She stared at him in disbelief, then burst out laughing. Ash, you're afraid of me? You're actually afraid of me? After everything I did for you, you're afraid of me? She laughed and laughed, then snatched the fruit knife from the floor and lunged at Ashton. Blood sprayed through the air, splattering across her face. She whispered softly, "It's okay, Ash. This way, we can be together forever." The hall erupted in screams. But I had already turned my back on it all, walking step by step toward the exit. My master was waiting for me outside. He didn't ask any questions. He just said, "Hurry up. Any later and the lotus soup will get cold." I couldn't help but smile. I gave a firm nod and hurried to catch up. Those who do wrong will always pay the price. The disaster was averted. My new life was just beginning. The end.